Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. Shop Talk is a weekly show. We're kicking back. We're enjoying Monday. Now, today happened to be a holiday for Mala and for me, so we didn't even have work to do. And yet I still did a bunch of work, don't ask. But if you had to work today, this is a chance to kick your feet up, have a little water cooler chat, talk a little shop, talk a little tech. And with me, speaking of Mala, over here, right there is Mala. How you doing, Mala?
Doing well. Hello, everyone.
Excellent. And in case you're not familiar with the format of Shop Talk, this is chat driven. This is your opportunity to derail me as frequently as you possibly can. I have faith in you, chat. I know you can do it. We have quite a bit of empirical evidence showing that you can do it. But Q&A style. If you have questions, we'll talk about them. We've got a couple of topics as well, just in case the questions don't flow. Remember, everybody, the spice must flow. But as we get started for tonight, first thing I do want to note is a TriPass meeting update. So a couple of weeks ago, made the call for speakers part 2, basically saying, hey, TriPass, we've got our main meeting pretty well booked for a while. But the advanced DBA and the data science and BI subgroups, we didn't have booked out as far as Tracy wanted. So reached out to some people, got some nice submissions. Tracy's been filling in the schedule. So we have a schedule in place that should cover us through at least mid-year. Still, if you are interested in speaking for our user group, we do have those 3 meetings every month. Second Tuesday of the month, Advanced DBA. Third Tuesday of the month, Main Meeting. Fourth Tuesday of the month, Data Science and BI. My hope is that starting in April and going forward from there, that we will have a hybrid main meeting, meaning that we'll be at a place in one position, one location. I'll bring the camera equipment. We'll set things up just like it was back in 2019, and hopefully have more often than not the speaker physically there along with the attendees. If you're not able to make it, we still will simulcast to Twitch, so you'll still be able to see it. But that's our goal with the main meeting. The other 2, we're currently, for the most part, leaving that online only. There may be an exception or 2 that I'll tell you about if everything comes into place as I want it to. But for the most part, that's going to be online only for now. Part of that is difficulty in finding venues. That it's a lot harder now to find someplace willing to host a user group meeting than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So we are looking. If you happen to have a location in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area that you know would be a good host for a user group, let me know. And I'm happy to have a chat with you and maybe send a group over that way. Speaking of which, the .NET user group is also looking for places to host. So it's not just us. So Trinug, the Triangle Area .NET user group, also looking for venues. We're passing information back and forth, and hopefully we can all find places and start getting some in-person meetings again. I know Trinug had some in-person meetings, and those were good. Hopefully they're able to pick it back up in 2023. So speaking of meetings, I do want to say, give out my apologies. I know that we've had a couple of meetings that we had to cancel at the immediate, during the time of the meeting. And wanted to take a moment talking about extending grace to speakers and organizers. Now, I make it clear, there's nobody in the community who said anything, did anything, intimated anything that prompted this. But I figured, you know what, we've had a couple of events where the speaker was ill or had an emergency or just wasn't able to make it to the event, and we had to cancel it at the time of or a few minutes in. So a no notice cancellation. Unfortunate. And again, Nobody was a jerk about this. Nobody prompted this, but I figured, you know what? We're talking about meeting updates. We're talking about plans, and because we had to cancel a couple of these sessions, I figured I did want to make mention that virtual meetings can be a lot harder to schedule, to keep in mind, keep them planned out. In part because there's a lot going on, and you may forget a calendar entry. People do get sick, things do happen, and oftentimes with a virtual meeting, it's kind of a last minute. Okay, I think I can make it. No, I really can't make it. Versus something in person where, especially if I had to travel in, I might contact them a little bit earlier and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry, I can't make this." So maybe giving the organizer time to scramble. In those sorts of circumstances, I mean, I've had to step in and give an impromptu talk when we had a speaker in person who couldn't do something. They had an emergency, they got sick, or family emergency or something, and like, hey, I am not able to do this. I'm sorry. And so, okay, well, we'll just change this. And I know that this person was supposed to speak, but instead, here, let me talk about the apply operator again. People like that one. It's a great operator. I highly recommend it. And so I do appreciate that people here in the community, you've been good about this, and hopefully we don't have too many instances of a speaker having to cancel. I know we've done it a few times over the past several years, but I aim for us to have that 34 meetings over the course of the year, not including shop talk. That is a lot of sessions, and I did do the math in my head, so it's probably right. It is right, by the way. That's our goal, and we aim to get there. So fortunately, we're not in a situation where missing one meeting means that people don't get to see each other for 2 months or 6 months. Like if I'm a member of some organizations that meet quarterly, and if they skip a quarter there, you're now talking about half a year between meetings. Versus us, where all right, we're doing it several times a month. We appreciate all of the speakers, all of the topics, all of the sessions. Hopefully, you appreciate that as well for all the ones that you find interesting enough to attend or are able to attend, and try to just bring you the best content at a regular cadence, and keep you addicted. So, with that in mind, I'm actually going to get closer to the microphone so that I can get a little bit louder, because I noticed my levels. My levels are a little bit low. Long story, basically, I had a cloud lifter that was adding 20 decibels to this microphone rig, but it turns out that it was adding 20 decibels plus a fair amount of hissing noise that had become more noticeable over time. So I had to get rid of that thing and pump in basically turn up the preamp pretty high, which means that it's now a lot more sensitive to outside noises, whereas before I could have it gated fairly effectively and cut out everything short of my speech. So that's a little behind the scenes on this microphone setup and how everything is awful and yada yada. Speaking of everything is awful, I have a topic. This topic comes from a Kevin Kline tweet that I just happened to notice today. And I'm going to drop a link to the tweet. And so in the tweet, Kevin says, all right, here's a conversation piece. Thinking about past jobs, what are some workplace red flags you know now that you wish you knew then? So one example, I once joined a company where no one was smiling or seemed happy. So Mala had a couple of responses. There were a few responses here in chat, in the thread. But Mala, you've got one. When you ask about, are you expected to be available off hours? And they answer
Yes.
with a sigh, always available.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad one. I saw Yins say the boss announces all employees can have a maximum of 2 private or personal outgoing emails per day, as well as incoming. Like, well, first of all, this is my private email account. You're not gonna block that. Um, I have worked at companies where they were very tough on we're gonna block everything that's personal. So Facebook blocked, YouTube blocked, Twitter blocked, any sort of social media blocked. A lot of personal websites blocked. Blogspot was blocked, which got to be really interesting when you start doing research. Like, I have a problem here that I need to investigate. And the URL here is from Blogspot because it's a blog post that somebody wrote. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had to get individual links whitelisted. They tamped down a little bit. They backed off somewhat on how draconian they were during my tenure there, but that was that was an interesting experience, especially compared to today, where at my current job, I've noticed people with 2 or 3 screens, where like one screen has Twitch, so they're just watching a Twitch stream, and like watching somebody play Overwatch or something, and then doing work on the other screens, and that one's just there as background noise. And I do see that difference. Like, yeah, I trust that you will get the work done. If you don't get the work done, that's okay. I'll just fire you. And I think that philosophy works out quite a bit better. So, Mala, do you have any other workplace red flags? I've got a couple, but they don't technically fit in with what Kevin said.
Usually, my typical questions are, especially with data work, it's like how often do you get called after hours, and anything related to that is definitely suspicious. And then another question I'd like to ask is how long you've been at your current gig. So, I mean, are there opportunities for growth, promotion, anything, or is it just the people doing the same old, same old, same old for years? That's also always a good sign. It's like when somebody says, like, yeah, I've had this role for like 10 years, I'm happy here. Some people like to mask that with saying, I'm happy here. I've been doing the same thing, 15 years, but I'm happy here. Obviously, it's an interview. They don't want to say bad things about their employer. That's understandable. But that is a definite red flag for me, is to ask questions. And that's happened a few times too. Is you ask how long the person's had that particular role, and then may not be a bad thing. Some people just like consistent jobs, but if you're not the kind who's going to be happy doing that, then it's a good thing to watch for.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that you mentioned there is on my list. So my list was reasons that I decided not to choose specific jobs.
Mhm.
So I was on an interview, and this was a thing that made me say, nope, not interested. And that one of them was that there's absolutely nothing bad that they could say about the company. I was in these meetings, in these interviews with people, and they could not say anything bad about the company. And I don't believe you. Uh, Now, I understand that you are trying to sell the company as well as you can in the interview process. And I understand you don't want to trash talk the company too badly, but be real about this. If there is absolutely nothing wrong with the company, you're either a cultist or you're lying to me. And I'm pretty sure I don't want to be in either situation. So tell me what's wrong. Oh, well, our PC refresh rate is once every 7 years. Or we have a lot of technical debt. We have a lot of problems. We have this circumstance. We have kaiju come in to destroy the building once every few years. I mean, at least let me know that there are problems here. Even if the problems are, uh, even if it's insubstantial, like, look, I don't like the coffee that they offer. Just tell me something, because that's part of this is, are you going to be honest with me at this juncture? And if you're not going to be honest with me right now at this interview, what happens when I do get the sticker shock? What happens when I come in and, oh, your company laptop is actually a Toshiba satellite notebook from 1995 running Windows 95. At least it's, we upgraded it in the last year, so it's no longer running 3.11 for work groups. That's the kind of thing that you want to make it clear, and I'm willing to accept that all companies have flaws, that all companies have faults. If you ask me about where I work, I'll give you the list. I mean, I've had my recruiting process when people would ask me, okay, I want to work at your company. What's it like? I had this long list of, hey, here's some really good stuff. Here's some bad stuff. Here's some stuff that, I don't know, maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. But look, just be honest, be clear, upfront about it. And that way, the people who are coming in, you're not going to shock them away after 2 days. Which does happen sometimes, where you walk in like, this is not the environment that you described. You told me you're running SQL Server 2022, and instead 90% of the machines that I'm responsible for are running 2000. And by the way, there are no plans to upgrade because vendors, blah blah blah. Some surprises are natural, but yeah, if the interviewers are unwilling to be straightforward about what they perceive as flaws with the company, that's
I've had cases.
Yeah, go for it, Mala.
No, I said I've had cases where they've been super honest too. I once had a case where two interviewers offered to walk me to my car after we were done, and during the walk, that's outside the office premises, they said, "Don't take the gig." They said it's really bad out here. We don't want more people getting into the same mess that we did. Don't take it. So that's happened too. But
Yeah,
that's rare. Yeah.
yeah, that's rare. And if people are going to explicitly tell you, hey, don't take this job, it's a really bad job, I'm gonna
Right.
believe them.
Yeah.
Especially if they're the ones those are the people the company's having interview. But also the fact that they had to tell it to you privately on a walk to the car. I thought at first it was going to be like, yeah, people get mugged in the parking lot on a daily basis. We're gonna walk you to the car to make sure nothing happens, which is itself something that you would probably want to mention in the interview process. If, hey, what's bad about this company? I mean, pay is great, benefits are good. Don't bring any wallet or valuables with you when you drive. Also, don't have a new car. Just drive a beater. Now the next one, another job that I decided not to take was that, hey, yes, you'll work 60-hour weeks to start with, but that's going to go down after you're hired. Well, I mean, we hope it'll go down after a year or two after you're hired. The current guy is working 80 hours, and we figure if we bring in a new guy and you're both working like 60 hours, and we'll hire somebody else as well. That's something I don't believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one where I did the math, and the pay was a slight increase. I mean, the overall number was a big increase, but when you compared that to 40 hours at this rate, 60 hours at this rate, it's like, that's not a very big rate, and that's a lot of marginal time. So that was one that I was glad I did not take. And at least they were honest about it. I did appreciate that level of honesty there, but I did sort of have to pick at it a little bit just to get the answers. Like, okay, so how long do you expect this to be? Oh, just a year or two until after this process is complete, and then it'll be a lot smoother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in corporate terms, a year or two means either forever or never, depending on whether it's something you want. Because if it's something you want, the answer is never. Oh, in a year or two, we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
It means we're never going to do it. If it's something that you don't want, in a year or two, we'll rewrite that.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
In a year or two, we'll fix this problem. It'll never be fixed. You will spend your entire tenure at the company fighting that same problem over and over and over. I'm being a little nihilistic at the moment, but I don't think I'm too wrong. Although, chat, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Another thing to lesson personally learned the hard way is that no job is better just because someone in the community recommends it. So be very careful with that. Actually, this is the first job that because Kevin was so honest in what he described about it, I took it and it turned out to be much less of a surprise than any other job would have been. And in most cases, when people from the community want to recommend, there are absolutely cases where it's well intentional and they want to help you find a better gig. There have been cases too for me where that person is on their way out, or they are going to be gone soon and they want the employer to have someone in their place when they go, and they're leaving because there are things that they don't like but they don't want to be upfront to you about it. So that's happened to me a couple of times. Once it happened when I was offered the gig, and before I could accept, the person who recommended me, he quit. So I'm like, dude, you brought me in, and now why are you gone? I mean, I was looking forward to working with you. Why are you gone? And he's like, no, there are things there that aren't quite nice, ma. And I withdrew acceptance when I heard the whole story. But this was after they made me the offer. So that's happened too.
Yeah, and so I guess one of the big things here, if you're going to make recommendations, do it with honesty. And
Right.
it's okay to say, "Hey, I got this from a recruiter. Here's what the job looks like. Look, I don't know any of the details about the company." That's fine. It's okay
Yeah.
to say, "Hey, this is a former employer. I worked there 4 years ago. Things may have changed, but here was my experience."
Hmm.
Or even this is how things are. And if it's a great job, cool, sell the great parts of it, but also don't be afraid to talk about the negatives. I mean, I think anybody with the level of maturity that you would want in a position is going to realize that there are negatives to every job. There
Oh, of
are
course.
going to be problems.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you can't understand that there will be problems, then I don't I don't think I would hire you to begin with. Um, but that's a whole different tweet. So another job that you might be surprised that I didn't take. So I was in this conversation. I already knew this was not going well. Several of the interview steps up to this point were going pretty well, and then the manager. So it was like a different team's manager, some of the employees, the HR person, and then the manager. And the manager, during this discussion, I'm already at a point where I'm like, I'm not interested in this position. I didn't say it out loud, but all right, you've already talked me off of this position. And the one of the real sellers for that was that manager made a statement. Now this has been a few years, so it's something that I don't have the quotation verbatim, but basically that people who go to user group meetings don't really know what they're talking about and aren't very good at their jobs.
What?
Yeah,
Man, that's
yeah.
a statement.
That was
Oh
that
my.
was not a direct quotation, but it was I think close enough that this was the intent of the person because I was talking about community. I was talking about what does the organization do with respect to the community. It was basically it's a waste of time. It's just a waste of time to go to those meetings, and the people who are there are not very good. It's like, all right, so you clearly didn't even look at my resume. Where at that point, I think I was vice president of TriPass at that point. I might have even been president of TriPass by then. So, like, oh, cool. You realize that I run the community here. Um, and just that absurdity, that was not even the thing that got me. That was like thing number five. And now, here's the funniest part, the real kicker. That other manager that I talked to at first, um, the way that I knew about the job was because he had recommended it to me at a Trinug meeting. So that other manager was regularly going to community meetings and learning from the community and doing a good job interacting with people. It's like, yeah, go talk to your other manager because that's why I'm here. They didn't even extend me an offer. They're like, no, we're not going to extend it. Like, great, that makes it easy because I wasn't going to accept.
Another thing
And you know
always,
what? I'm
go on.
happy that I didn't accept that job. Even frankly, for the rest of it, not even that part. That part was just the kicker. The rest of it was, this doesn't seem like a great job. But
Happened once that at some at an interview too for me that they had some older versions of SQL Server. I forget which version. It's been a while, like a few, older version, maybe 2012ish, around that time, something around that time. So there was the two DBAs, their boss. There were three people interviewing, and I was sitting opposite. And my resume was clear, like so many years in the community, blah, everything was there. Running local user group, everything, and all that. And they said, you're not, why haven't you upgraded? I asked like, okay, why? What are your reasons? And you're so behind and all of that. And one of them said, Brent also recommended that that we not upgrading is a good idea when your older version is stable, something to that effect. I don't remember the exact lines, but something to that effect. He recommended, and I'm like, I follow him pretty regularly, and I don't think he recommended anything like that. Okay. And the boss leans over to one of his colleagues and says, she talks like she knows Brent personally. And it's like, it's like I just happen, I really happen to know him personally. Okay. So, I mean, I didn't tell them that. I was just sitting there, like, okay, definite no, for sure. And it's like, they didn't make me the offer. I was glad I didn't get it. But it was over. Like, that kind of assumption that people don't know any that's really bad.
yeah, and it's not just this is Mala who knows, but also, hey, let me name drop a person. Like, oh yeah, no, I worked with that guy. I can send him a text right now if you want information. So that's also part of why it's probably better not to smack talk people too much, because people know people. It's weird.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
this like social interaction thing that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
My
But a
fourth
lot of
item.
stuff like
Oh,
that gets passed off in, especially the names of people who are very well known. They want to make a case or they want to justify something stupid they did. They like that. That's one way they do it. It's just attribute it to someone because you assume that person is clearly not in the room and nobody is likely to know that person. So you say, okay, Paul Randall said it or Brent said it or somebody said it, right? So like it makes them sound very authoritative and like, okay, yeah, nobody's going to object to that, so just say it. Like, I've heard a lot of loose quotes like that attributed to people that they never said.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a combination of argument from authority and uh, let me find a name of a smart person, and I think this is something that person said. And then sometimes you go back and yeah, that person did say it. Sometimes you go back, no, that person actually said the opposite. And yeah, that does happen. Um, and misunderstanding people, that's fine. It happens. But ultimately, unless you're paying for the consulting hours, uh, yeah, Brent Ozar didn't set up your system. Paul Randall didn't set up your system. Now, if they did, if you paid them and they did it, then okay, that's another story altogether. And
Right.
then you can say, okay, let's look at the quality of the system, the quality of the work as it is done, and treat it as that, rather than who set this thing up. Like, I don't necessarily care who set it up. I care more, what is it doing, how is it performing, how is it working, how maintainable is it, and how uh, what are the issues that people run into with it, rather than who set it up. If it's someone I've never heard of and they did a great job of it, okay, that's fine. I might want to get to know this person because if they did a great job here, then they might have done great jobs elsewhere, and maybe I want to hire
Mhm.
that person someday. But yeah, that that is something that happens a lot where, oh, person X said this and therefore it's okay, or therefore it's correct, or therefore it's better, it's the right option. But oftentimes, we couch statements in it depends isms
Mm.
of, well, in my circumstances here, this worked. And sometimes we get explicit about here's why it worked, that I had this hardware running this way, I performed these tests, and then it becomes, look, it's here was what the end result was in my situation. But if I'm doing things right, if I'm teaching as well as I can, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't happen, then I will try to include here are the antecedents, here are the precursors, and what ends up being a solution here is because of these items which are given. And if your environment is different, if your setup is different, if your situation is different, then the conclusion may not be exactly the same. And you try to have that conversation about what is the right answer. Sometimes there is a clear right answer. Don't care, go away if you think otherwise. That's rare, but it does happen. Like, like actually, since we're name dropping, Paul Randall and database shrinking, and even then, I mean, I know Paul has a very on the edge opinion about don't shrink. I don't have that opinion. I say shrink only if you need to, and in rare cases will you ever need to. 90+% of the time, when you think you need to shrink, you probably don't. But there are specific scenarios where okay, shrinking is okay. Shrinking works. It's what makes sense. And in those scenarios, here is the process. But that requires the person behind the keyboard to think about it and to apply a practice versus this was the information that I got from a website and therefore I'm using that. Mala, you are a little bit out of focus.
I don't know what's happening. I don't know if
My,
it's my camera or is it whereby or something. Okay, it's better now.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's your camera because it went out of focus right around the time that you walked away. So I think it was trying to
Okay.
auto track you.
Okay. Fair enough.
So last item, last one from this list here. We fired the prior team and we need to get things done quickly. And if you in this case they actually did get rid of the entire team. They like complete sacking. At that point, you're not getting things done quickly because the first step at that point is essentially architecture archaeology. You are going to spend months digging through trying to understand what are these systems? Where are these systems? Why are these systems? Why is usually the difficult question. But how do these things interact? How do they connect? What are things doing? And you spend a lot of time. I mean, just think as a new employee at a regular company, it may take you months to get up to speed with what the circumstances are around that company. Understanding the subject, understanding the current systems in place, and being able to ask questions of the 90% of the people who have been there for a while and are knowledgeable about certain subject matter elements or about the history of a system, and at least give you an idea of why things are the way that they are. You throw people into this brand new situation and we need to move fast. We've got deadlines to meet. That's just asking for trouble. Like unless you're saying completely burn everything that exists to the ground and start over new, you're setting up the new team for failure. So those were the workspace red flags that I've got. The next thing we want to talk about, Mala had this link, so blame Mala. The article comes from Solutions Review, and it is 7 key big data trends and predictions for 2023 and beyond. I'm gonna try not to be too mean to the article, which kind of gives you an idea of what I think of the article as a whole. So there are 7 of these trends or predictions. And a couple of them, like, yeah, that's definitely a trend. A couple of them, it's definitely a prediction. And I think the predictions are wrong. So I'm going to walk through each of these in turn because I think that'll be fun. Also, I'm cruel that way. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do, chat. We're going to share a window. No, we're going to share a Brave tab. Let's share this tab. There we go. Look at that. So look at that. We're getting all fancy here. And
Yeah, you've
as
never
I
done
as
that,
I
and that's neat.
yeah. I mean, there are all these capabilities that I'm just not clever enough to take advantage of. So them's the breaks when I'm in charge. So all right, here's the article. This is from Peter Nemeth, and again, the intent is not to spend too much time given the grief. But if you do want to read it, I've given a link in chat. And the trends. Number one, data producing tools become more diverse, but the customer lifecycle of each tool becomes shorter. The gist of this is essentially as people use a bunch of software as a service tools, there's a lot of different tool usage within organizations. People don't tell that, oh, well, I've got this tool and I've got this tool and I've got this one and this one. And as a quick example, like, oh, well, I'm using Evernote. Oh, well, I'm using OneNote. Well, I'm using Todoist. I'm using this tool. And so the company's paying for a bunch of these tools without realizing it. And then people switch tools. They try things out, they switch them around, and as a result, you have this explosion in terms of tools, but then a lot of these don't get used after a while. The person who liked Evernote left, and now nobody uses Evernote anymore, but the company's still paying for it, as an example. I think this is fair, but I also think this is... I've worked in large corporations. This has been the case for decades. So I consider this true, but more of a trend than a prediction of something new. This has definitely been the case for decades, where, yeah, we have SQL Server and Oracle and DB2 and Teradata. I mean, one of my first jobs was integrating Oracle and Teradata together at a company which also had major implementations of SQL Server and about 3 or 4 other large database technologies. So that organization, yeah, they were a buy everything type of company. And I expect that they had a lot of different tool chains, a lot of different products that they bought for different development groups. And so as a result, yeah, you had quite a bit of product bloat. I guess I could say it. So I would call that one fairly true. This one, database integrations becoming architecture agnostic.
That's what got me.
This one gets me as well. So the idea here is that, well, as tools are getting better, as modern data platforms get better, you get this notion of reverse ETL. ETL, extract, transform, load, or ELT, extract, load, transform. Typically, the context behind that is I have my transactional systems. I want to migrate that data into a warehouse, and it's sort of that one-way communication. Reverse ETL is this notion that, well, I have all this data in a warehouse. I should be able to load it back into a transactional system for ease of use. Classic warehouses are typically one way. You're loading into the warehouse. The warehouse is not the source system. It does not have the ability to track lineage, or it doesn't have the ability to reconstitute itself. The transactional database should always be available, or the source system should always be available to reconstitute the warehouse. That is a classic in warehousing theory. It is something that a lot of companies do not do for various reasons. But the idea behind it is if your warehouse explodes, can you rebuild that warehouse from scratch? Most of the time, the answer is no. If you do a great job of it, the answer should be yes. You should be able to rebuild that thing. So that's the idea. But then reverse ETL basically says, oh, well, we can take that data back from the warehouse, load a new source system with that data, and sort of treat the warehouse itself as a source system. James Serra has done some blogging about the topic. It's an interesting idea. I'm not sure. I don't think we're there in terms of capabilities, and I'm not positive I want to be there in terms of data fidelity, because you have more disparate systems, more spreading out of data, and makes me wonder, where is the truth? Where is the true result here? Is it in the warehouse? Is it in source system A? Is it in source system B? If those three don't agree with each other, which one is correct? And how do I sort that out?
Also, warehouses are aggregated versions usually, right, Kevin? So to break and aggregate down to its components, you lose so many data elements in that process. So how do you accurately do that?
Yeah, so if we think about a warehouse, I guess this is warehouse versus data lake.
Hmm.
And yeah, in a warehouse, oftentimes we are performing aggregations. We are transforming from a relational scheme to facts and dimensions. We
Hmm.
are incorporating multiple source systems together to create a business friendly picture of the data.
Hmm.
With a data lake, you can make this argument a little bit better with a data
Hmm.
lake, where basically we're going to extract data from a source system and just store it in the data lake. We're going to timestamp it. We're going to be able to know what this record was as of a relevant time frame. And then if I need to reload a source system, I do have the data lake raw data so that I could translate it back.
Hmm.
There's some truth to that idea. There's some value in
Okay.
that idea.
Okay.
I also am always concerned about how well it will work,
Hmm.
because there are enough bugs in in pulling data from source systems to begin with
Hmm.
that I don't know that I would want to trust it.
Hmm.
If you can reverse a warehouse into a source transactional system, then was it really a warehouse? Yeah, that's a fair point, Solomon. And so that's where I'm saying, as if you're talking about a data lake, where the raw data is just it's a copy of what was in that source system, and then you perform the translations, you perform the data cleanup, the aggregations, the business processing, and eventually that makes it into a warehouse. So this point, my core area of disagreement is architecture agnostic platform that serves all integration types. Pick a source, destination, and send, and especially tying it in with this third item that data integration tools are going to be this like drag and drop, click a few things, and it'll just work. And my answer to that is, hello, the year 2005 is talking to us about SQL Server integration services. Would you like to hear more? This has been the dream for decades. And frankly, we can talk about DTS in 2000. We can talk about Informatica from the 90s. These tools have been around for decades, and yet there are new tools that come out. There are new processes that come out. Why? Because drag and drop doesn't scale. If we're talking about, here is my way to load a table, and I've seen new modern technologies that work really well. Just click and drag, and click, 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 click. 85 clicks later, we've got our source and we've got our destination, and I can make copies of this data. That's okay, but I have 1,700 tables. So how do we do this? Oh, well, you just do this one at a time for each table. Or if all of them happen to be just extract, like select star from table and then write it out to a file somewhere, oh, that's fine. We can support that. But as soon as you have dozens of more complex scenarios, I only want to load this subset of data. I only want to, I want to be able to connect multiple systems together. I want to be able to do change data capture and track the changes in data over time. Those tools, it takes more and more clicks, it takes more and more dragging, it takes more and more logic to get anywhere approximating the answer that you need. Integration services. There's a reason that there was an entire language that was built around generating SQL Server integration services packages that treat the package itself as a binary rather than as the source. These drag and drop systems, to the extent that they are really user friendly, tend not to scale at all. To the extent that they can scale, they're basically writing code. So I don't see a world in which we have low code or no code business intelligence. Yeah, if your answer is, well, just copy all the raw data into the data lake, yes, you can do that with a script, but you're not going to get your curated data or your refined or your curated data. You're not going to be able to build that warehouse, to load that warehouse, to generate the metrics that are necessary for the business side.
Kevin, it's just spinning.
Oh, it's just spinning?
Yeah. Okay, we're back.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, folks. I just got the message from my machine here that I had been disconnected, and we're now reconnected. We're back. We're live. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how much of the rant you folks heard, but I can see that yes, we are sending data again. Not sure what happened there. I have 0 dropped frames, which makes it really weird, but sorry about that. So the point that I was getting at with this that particular topic and the one before it, with business intelligence solutions, typically you're going to have low/no code and won't scale, or will scale but requires a team of dedicated engineers to maintain it. So that is the way that life is, because data transformation is complex and the data integration tools haven't really gotten significantly better about handling the complexities of data. They still work roughly at the same level of quality as what we had 15 to 20 years ago. There are more niceties to them. There are more locations where you can write to and locations where you can read from. But once you get past the simple scenario, the demo, doing this for real is a lot of work. And I do not believe that 70% of new applications will rely on low and no code technologies, unless you're saying, oh, well, they'll use Power BI as a way of reading data. I mean, first of all, no, that's not low code or no code. Second of all, even if it is, there's a whole lot of code back behind it. Maybe chat. Yeah. And what I mean a lot of code behind it, I don't mean, oh, well, Power BI was written in a lot of code. What I mean is you have all of the data model. You have all of the data transformation processes. You have all of this stuff where you have a lot of code that the company is responsible for, even if at the very end, somebody is just dragging and dropping visuals. Even within Power BI, you have DAX, you have M. That's 2 separate languages that you're probably going to be writing a fair amount of as you get more complicated situations, as you have more business requirements. Mm-hmm. And Solomon says maybe ChatGPT can generate SSIS packages. That's gonna lead me to a whole nother rant one of these days. I don't think ChatGPT is that good. Excuse me, ChatGPT. I don't think it's that good. I think Now, on the plus side, I have seen an article where BuzzFeed used ChatGPT to review an article that somebody else used ChatGPT to write. I think it was CNET. And yeah, it can replace barely literate journalism majors. But as far as doing anything useful, I don't think so. I mean, they weren't doing anything useful to begin with. So yeah, go ahead, replace them. But when your solution is go find a thing that if it doesn't know the answer will just make up something that makes it sound convincing, well, you have a journalism major. Okay, moving on. The demand for citizen data scientists continues. I think this is probably fairly true. I question how valuable it will be. It depends. I mean, citizen data scientist, I hate the term to begin with, because nobody wants to say amateur. You're an amateur. And or dilettante. I mean, dilettante is probably the better term than amateur because you're probably getting paid as this. If you're not getting paid, then yeah, you're an amateur data scientist. If you are getting paid and you're just not very good at it, you're a dilettante. And that's sort of I'm a data scientist, but I'm not very good at it, so I'm going to apply this label. Well, I mean, it's okay. Those people exist. Some of those people do interesting things, and I'm not denigrating anybody who is learning about data science, who is interested in it, or is trying to apply certain statistical techniques. That's not where I'm really trying to go here. I did want to poke a bit of fun at the term, but I do believe that yeah, the field will grow. I also think that the field will mutate as part of its growth, and that 10 years from now, there will be a new term for people who use statistics to do their jobs. And that will be some other term instead of data scientist, because data scientist will mean person who clicks a few things in Tableau or Power BI.
I wish. I can click a few terms. I know how to both Tableau and Power BI.
There you go. And having a decentralizing effect on data governance policies, this, I think, is happening. I mean, we see within Power BI, there is a move toward, there are conflicting tendencies, because you do have central IT, which wants to own data, that wants to coordinate everything. Everything goes through the central location. But central IT is also rarely willing to be responsible for getting the data to people in a timely fashion. And that leads to the tension of, I need this data, so I'm going to keep it myself in Excel spreadsheets. And we have spread marts, where on some share someplace, I've got a bunch of spreadsheets, and that forms the real data warehouse. We don't use the one that IT has built because it doesn't have the data we need. Instead, we have these Excel spreadsheets on a share drive, or this Access database that our intern put together. So this is a case where I believe that it is fairly accurate, but it's also not really that new. I think it's something that we've had this tension. This tension will always exist between I need particular data in a particular fashion. Central IT wants organized data in a centralized fashion. And there will be that contrast, there will be that tension. I do believe that we're seeing a relative shift more in favor of decentralized data. And I think within a few years, that is actually going to shift back, that there is going to be another push for centralized data, especially if the next item on the list is actually true. Data security becomes a major concern for buyers. I'm not sure that this will be true. I'm not sure yet that any organization cares, because I'm not sure that a large enough percentage of their user base cares. And what I mean by this is, Facebook or Meta has a $290 million fine. This was 2022, 400 million euro served to Instagram. So for Instagram, I think they had another like $290 million recently in 2023. And does that change their behavior? No, not really. Does that change the behavior of anybody who would build their platform around Meta or Instagram? No, not really. And when we see a massive data breach, hey, when Blue Cross Blue Shield exposed hundreds of millions of people's information, how many people actually changed their insurance providers?
Good question.
Probably, yeah, probably none. But insurance is tied to companies, so it's really difficult to do that. Okay, great. When whoever gets hacked, you get an email, hey, this organization has been hacked and their data has been exposed. What percentage of people actively quit using that product or sell their shares in that company or actually do something that whose behavior is modified because of that hack? Very insignificant number. I mean, it's depressing news, but effectively nobody cares. And we'll all cluck about it, and then when they've been hacked again, I'll just change my password. So yeah, that I don't see it being a big deal, just because I don't see people thinking it is a big deal on the whole. And so yeah, sure, Google pays some fines. Meta, I hate that name, by the way, they pay some fines, and then they just move on to do the same thing they were going to do beforehand. All right. Data quality remains a challenge. Yes, I totally believe that. Data quality will always be a challenge. Data is always garbage. AI plays a bigger role in cleaning data.
Is that really true?
Nah, maybe a little. Maybe a little, but not a lot. There are specific areas. So the problem with artificial intelligence is garbage in, garbage out. You are trying to solve a supervised or a semi-supervised learning problem here, which means you have to have some percentage of really, really good data. And for data cleanup, if you start off with a small amount of extremely good data, you can use that to bootstrap additional phases. Now, at the bottom, the author does mention that they will be implemented alongside people-focused solutions, because there's really no great way to automate all data cleanup. You can do it for specific problems and specific domains if you have enough good examples. But if what you have is tens of millions of garbage examples or of messy examples where maybe 5% of the data is total garbage, 10% of the data is not great, and 85% of the data is somewhere between fine and excellent, you still have problems. There are enough cases where you will have weird results. I mean, this will be like, just to give you a completely off-the-wall counter example here. This is like saying, AI-driven art will replace all art in the next decade. Come back to me when it can draw hands. With this, you have the equivalent of drawing hands. Yeah, this can solve. If I want something where I have plenty of examples of how to do it right, I can then have this system understand and interpret and generate things that are reasonably good. But it's not going to be perfect, and there will be flaws. The last bit, BI tools become mobile friendly for passive use. I think that's already being shown in the market. Power BI, for example, as a phone app, you can pop it up, you can work with it directly. So yes, I do see mobile being an area where there is a lot of focus in terms of business intelligence tooling, and I do think that it is reasonable to consider that in a corporate environment, where we're going to be able to drill into reports. I have a few minutes between meetings and I need to pull up some info. I want to be able to just pop around, click around, or to quickly see if a monitoring dashboard is running effectively, if everything is working well. So I do think mobile is a big deal. I think it will become more of a big deal over time. But, even today, there is enough involved to make me say, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. So, all right, everybody, we have done it. We have spent an entire hour talking about stuff. I'm going to take this, turn this computer off, tear it apart, and go back behind the green screen and rebuild a PC because I'm insane. So tomorrow, despite the fact that I'm rebuilding a PC tonight, I'm still going to say tomorrow we're going to have our meeting, and I will worst case Ontario, I'll host it from a laptop, but I should have everything built by then. So tomorrow, main meeting, Lee Markham is going to talk about 4 focus points for a new DBA. You're in a new role. Here's what to do. Come by and check that out. meetup.com/trypass. And until we see each other again, everyone, take care.
Bye. Good night.